Thank you for joining us again for the Geometric View, episode 44, season 4. This week we get into bats. That's it. Yeah. Crazy bats, like batshit crazy. Yeah. The geometry of bats, aerodynamics of bats, bat biowarfare, bat bombs. Yeah, apparently they put bats in bombs and bombed Japan. Let's get into it. We get into all sorts of crazy. The best way to support us is on PayPal. goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you. So we're going to jump into the episode, guys. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Geometric View, episode 44, season 4. Today we're going to be doing it on bats. I think I might have already said that, but in case I cut that chatter out from the beginning, we're going to get deep into the aerodynamics. I have been researching this and thinking about it for quite some time, and there's plenty to go on here having to do with bats, and exactly the vortices and the vortexes and their wings and just a whole bunch of other fun stuff and scary stuff, because this is 2020, year of the bat. I have a bat quarter here, right here. If you could see that, I don't know if I could. Yep, there's a little bit of a glare. So there's the bat and the upside down bat, and that's this year. So that's just one of the quarters that came out this year. Another one of the quarters, I think, says Rockefeller on it or something like that. Part of one of the cities, who knows, or states. But yeah, keep your eyes open and you'll see all sorts of geometries and signs plain in sight out there. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, hop right into the presentation. I wasn't going to do a presentation. I did a cartography, cartograph, map, whatever you want to call it, drawing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this a little bit better. So I did a presentation. So Chiroptera, bats. Here we go. Chiroptera, or bats. Aerodynamics of bats inherent within the Dougherty Network, or the Doherty set. Now, we're going to get into the vortex wingtips a little bit later, but I want to show some of the aerodynamics here and how there is actually opposing spiral vortices. There's one vortex moving one way on one wing, an up vortex and a down vortex on the other, and they can move them around and flip them around with this little tip here. We're going to get more into the science of that in articles from I think phys.org. So this is me just kind of laying the bat down into certain positions in certain places that I know are reminiscent of what I have to understand of the beginning and end of the opening of a wavelet, which is inside of the 6th circle here. And inside this 6th circle happens to sit the bat perfectly inside here. And inside, I guess I'm gonna zoom into these on Illustrator, because I have it pulled up on Illustrator. So after the presentation, and in a minute here, you'll see closer up zoomed in pictures of some of these. So there is I don't know if I put the pictures of some of the names of what their ears are, but their ears have another ear inside their ear, which is meant to pick up the reverberations or the bouncing back of the sounds for their sonar. So Um, I just want to point out this is just a section. These are spheres directly pulled out of here, and how they overlap and create how this lays out with their limbs and their fingers um, is just really, really mind blowing, and helps us understand some of the vortex dynamics, because this is the core here. This is geometry right at the core when you put an animal right on the center, like in its pineal, and you have the vortex dynamics of it, of the tail spin and the tail like a plasmoid outside of a planet, and you have each dactyl uh, responsible and digit, and also where they bend the ball and joint accounted for in this simple um, magnetohydrodynamic geometry. So this is mimicry on all scales. Everything is mimicry on all scales, and whether it's government or other biomimicry or many different other camouflage. And I believe the mimicry comes from inspiration. I think creatures can be inspired to want to transform into certain types of flowers, like bugs, transform into certain types of, particularly the praying mantis, changes into all sorts of different um, floral type of creatures. So I really get into the dynamics of creatures not only changing because uh, of survival of the fittest and the Darwinist that type of perspective, but it's more like mimicry, the best of beatific mimicry all the way down. The scales are becoming more beautiful on all levels. And beauty is a measure of the golden ratio, as we see different deformations in characters and faces and creatures that are out of balance and out of harmony or out of sync, or they're messed up, or the one wing's larger than the other or something. It's out of the proportions of the golden mean. Um, so not only the face, the body, the structure, the design, the field is creating these forms over and over and over again. You can lay these down and see how this cascading network of spheres fractally cascading in in a lattice or grid type of birkeland current type structure, where as above so below, the cosmic idea is reverberated through the planet over and over and over and over. These creatures have been around for so long. So here we go. Chiroptera is the name of the order of the only mammal capable of true flight. The bat, the name is the bat. The name is influenced by the hand-like wings of bats, which are formed from 4 elongated fingers covered by a cutaneous membrane. So bat aerodynamics, a couple more close-up images here. Scroll through. And this is very symbol. I mean, this reminds me of something satanic, or like some sort of symbology of, not necessarily satanic, but bats have always been used for hysteria throughout the ages. People are horrified of bats. So we're going to get into the fear of bats. And if we don't, we need to. So remind me about the fear of bats, because it's not in the presentation, and the psychological fears of bats. So all sorts of different things. Bats evolved. I got this source from down here. So verbatim, I took it off of gev.biologist.org. So bat aerodynamics. Bats evolved the ability of powered flight more than 50 million years ago. The modern bat is an efficient flyer, and recent research on bat flight has revealed many intriguing facts. By using particle image velocimetry to visualize wake vortices, both the magnitude and time history of aerodynamic forces can be estimated. At most speeds, the downstroke generates both lift and thrust, whereas the function of the upstroke changes with forward flight speed. We'll get into that in a little bit. At hovering and slow speed, bats use a leading edge vortex to enhance the lift beyond that allowed by steady aerodynamics and an inverted wing during the upstroke and further aid weight support. So we're going to get into that LEV, the LEV, leading edge vortex, and how the mechanics of it too, and building robots, the robotics of it, because that's important. So I think that comes up right in a minute here. The batwing and its skeleton exhibit many features and control mechanisms that are presumed to improve flight performance. Whereas bats appear aerodynamically less efficient than birds when it comes to cruising flight, they have an edge over birds when it comes to maneuvering. There is a direct relationship between kinematics and the aerodynamic performance. I love that, kinematics. But there is still a lack of knowledge about how and if the bat controls the movements and shape, platform, and chamber of the wing, considering the relatively few bat species whose aerodynamic track have been characterized. There is scope for new discoveries and a need to study species representing more extreme positions in the bat morphospace. So if we look at this is what they're talking about. If they have the ability to control this, and they do, and that's why they hover. And there's more newer evidence that shows how they hover, and we'll get into that in a little bit here, showing a little bit more of the aerodynamics. Okay, so there's something about bats that attracts our interest. They are mammals that took to the wing around the KT boundary some 65 million years ago. And please feel free to tell me that I'm wrong or this article is wrong, because I just copied it. And the ecological turmoil that followed the dramatic environmental changes that drove the dinosaurs to extinction. Therefore, bats underwent an adaptive radiation that led to early forms such as the Laryncotrix, something like that, index, and I don't know that one. This is sourced from Jeffstein, 1970 there, and through 2008, which looked nearly as modern bats already more than 50 million years ago. Okay, so they looked the same. Today, about every fifth mammal species is a bat, and as a group, bats are only outnumbered by the rodents. See, I thought they were the most prolific species, or most numbered, different phylums of different types of bats, but I guess rodents have them beat. So I know there's more different types of bats than there are cats, rats, and dogs combined. Different types of those. But yet their nocturnal lifestyles make them less conspicuous than other animals, and their dark-seeking habits have also been the source of many myths as well as misconceptions about their life. With modern techniques, this is rapidly changing, and research interest on bats is steadily increasing. The ability of bats to negotiate obstacles in complete darkness was the focus of Lorenzo Splenzelin I botched that, sorry guys, experiments in the late 18th century. But researchers did not discover that bats are able to echolocate by emitting ultrasounds until 1930s by Pearson Griffin. That's the thing there. Flight dynamics was initially studied by means of cinematography, and studies of wing beat kinematics remained the kinematics remained the main approach for aerodynamic analysis until flow visualization techniques were further developed. Wing beat kinematics and qualitative flow visualization of wake vortices were used to reveal the function of the upstroke during the hovering and slow flight versus forward flight. But qualitative aerodynamic studies of bat flight in relation to flight speed had to wait until development of modern wind tunnels for animal flight and modern flow visualization techniques. So here's a little bit about bat echolocation. Bats used echolocation to navigate and find food in the dark. To echolocate, bats send out sound waves from the mouth or nose. When the sound waves hit an object, they produce echoes. Bats aren't blind, but they can use echolocation to find their way around very quickly in total darkness. The picture here, bat sonar, return sound waves. Counter-rotating wingtip vortices. This is what they keep talking about, is this little tip. And everything in the aerodynamic geometry of me speaking about the Doherty set from the beginning till now, and from even before that, has been about the tips of these shapes and these geometric shapes and how they connect. I guess the vortex dynamics. So I really get into wingtip vortices, and this picture here really shows what they're talking about with an upstroke and a downstroke, with a downbeat and an upbeat at the same time. So honeybees and hummingbirds can hover like helicopters for minutes at a time, sucking the juice from their favorite blossom while staying aloft in a swirl of vortices. Leading edge vortex. The airflow passing over the lev of a flapping wing left an amazingly smooth and ordered laminar disturbance at the trailing edge of the wing. This is the image here. And the lev itself accounted for at least 40% increments in lift. Speeding noted in his commentary, leading edge vortex improves lift in slow flying bats. The LEV makes a strong lift force, but it may be equally important that the smooth flow behind it may be associated with low or at least not increased drag. There it is there. And I actually sent a picture to our group of it inside of the Doherty set, and it shows the circles of this. I just found this, so I didn't do it immediately, and I couldn't add it to this slide because of the file that I saved it as, but I'll show you in a minute here of this image inside the Doherty set and the Dougherty Network, and exactly what they're talking about here is really important. So the lev makes a strong lift force, but it may be equally important that the smooth flow behind it may be associated with low or at least not increased drag. The sharp leading edge of the bat wing generates the lev, Speeding said, while the bat's ability to actively change its wing shape and wing curvatures may contribute to control and stability in the leading edge vortex. Back to some of these images here, the control comes in these dynamics of these spheres. You bend this sphere, you move this down, and it moves this, and it forces these overlapping vortices, which would and could be considered as constructive and destructive vortices along the tips here and along the inside of the bat. So Speeding and his colleagues believe observations of LEVs in active unrestricted bat flight have important implications for overall aerodynamic theory and for the design of miniature robotic flight vehicles, which have been undergoing dramatic modifications in recent years. So that was 2008. It was a long time ago. So I just threw that in there to basically give us more idea about some of the aerodynamics and stuff that I'm talking about, and how the as above, so below, the geometry coming in is the geometry we're still flapping around with, and everything is minimal energy configurations trying to maximize their life and not die, predator versus prey type of situation, but also increasing beauty, I think, is an important trait of all different creatures. All the dogs are super cute. All the cats are super cute. You know, creatures, animals, they're beautiful. Everything in life is gorgeous. There's an enveloping and inherent beauty in everything. So this inherent beauty has basic simplistic blocks, and the basic simple self-assimilating origins of these is the first principle magnetohydrodynamic geometry that comes right out of the Doherty set. So I'll show that in a minute here, and it also comes out. You know, it's in the Bessel function. It's the geometry that comes out of the repeating gong, the repeating drum, the repeating thought, the repetition of fractality and fractals, going over and over, creating bodies in between of constructive and destructive interference, plasma and resonance. It's beautiful. But anyway, here we go. Bat bombs. I just found this out. So bat bombs were an experimental World War II weapon developed by the United States. The bat bomb consisted of a bomb-shaped casting with over 1,000 components or compartments, each containing a hibernating Mexican free-tailed bat with a small timed incendiary bomb attached. Dropped from a bomber at dawn, the castings would deploy a parachute in mid-flight and open to release the bats, which would then disperse and roost in eaves and attics in a 20 to 40 mile radius, 32 to 64 kilometers. The incendiaries which were set on timers, would then ignite and start fires in inaccessible places in the largely wood and paper constructions of the Japanese cities that were the weapon's intended target. Okay, so bat bombs. That's really crazy. Really crazy. So this isn't the first time we've used bats. So this is like kind of like bat biowarfare, but more bat biowarfare would be like 2020, beginning of everyone saying that it came from a bat, and then it came from that, what's that animal? Armadillo or something. But either way, at the beginning of the year, so they were talking about bat biowarfare.
Pangolin.
Pangolin, yes, and the pangolin was on the front page of Newsweek, and they in 2019, and then in 2020, they tried to say that it came from a bat that got it from a pangolin, and this is bat biowarfare. The latest theory laid out, and this is from 2011 or April 11th, 2020 article. The latest theory laid out in a recent article by the Washington Post has another spin on this. The virus source could have been a researcher infected by a bat, or a sloppy disposal of hazardous material at a Wuhan care for disease control facility, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure everyone here has heard the bat idea. That's been passed around the world, right?
Right.
So this is pretty much the end of my presentation here with bat robotics. Batbot, flying robot, mimics ridiculously stupid complexity of bat flight. The two-way robotics, and this is from 2017. The two-way robotics experts at Caltech and the University of Illinois, Urbana, Champaign have created a robot that mimics the flight patterns of bats, including swerving and diving, February 2017. So we can get into that bat. Let's get out of this presentation and hop around wherever we want to go. That's it for the presentation. So I got my thing here. I want to see that. I want to see that bat robot. Okay, this is 2 years ago. This is the one from Caltech that I just read. Let's check this one out first. We'll watch it for a little bit so we don't get a copyright strike. Pretty cool. And if anybody did not know, 2020 is going to be filled with robotic terrorism. Possibly, maybe not. I don't know. I'm a comedian, so I just said that because it was funny, but it's not funny. But what if it was? What if it did happen? I mean, there's robotic dogs. You can buy them. They're not that expensive either for drug lords to carry around their kilos. I mean, so I'm skipping around on this video here because I don't want to get a copyright strike. So, but this is pretty cool. All right, so that's that. Here's the newer one, Bionic Flying Fox, which I think is a type of. They refer to bats as flying foxes sometimes, different cultures. So I keep hearing from Adapt 2030 that they are that they're taking all the creatures and they're turning it into a biocurrency, a cryptic biocurrency. They're mapping out, they're trying to do it by 2025 or 2030, but all of them by 2045, and turn it into some sort of a crypto, a blockchain currency, as the planet being worth something, you know, and each creature being worth something. And this has always been the plan to at least one of the plans to do this through
the plan is to monetize everything.
Yes, it is to monetize everything, and they're gonna get the signature of every single animal and categorize them and the worth and all this other stuff and how to keep it around. And what is this? Ecology? We have already been taking our freedoms away from ourselves on the regular in the name of security for nature and natural environment resources. But a lot of stuff has to be protected, you know, the EPA. But this is all part of it in the name of peace. In the name of peace, we will keep ourselves in our homes and out of the parks and away from everywhere else, and you'll have to go through checkpoints to get there. This was material that was written in the 90s before, and I'm going to get a little bit conspiratorial, but we can also look this kind of stuff up. This episode's the bat, okay? This year is the bat. Let's get into some crazy weird shit, like Heath Ledger's death, or where's my notes? The fact that Batman in general, The Dark Knight Rises, the shooter in Aurora, Colorado. You know, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say these things, but you know, it all has to do with Batman. And there's always something weird that happens. There's what is the folklore around bats? I want to look that up. The English word bat is a name for a small flying mammal. It comes from the Old English word becky, meaning to flutter. Well, the English word batty means crazy, in a harmless sort of way. So yeah, there's batshit crazy, there's batty, there's in England they also say that someone who is a little mad has gone bats in the belfry.
Belfry.
Bats in the belfry.
You have bats in the belfry.
On the other side of the world, and a long time ago, the Aztec word for bat was apparently what? That's a lot to say. Bilotti, which meant butterfly mouse. That's cool. That's cute. More like butterfly fox. Furthermore, in Greece in the Middle Ages, there was a myth that bats arose from a mouse. Myth states that a mouse came into a church and stole one of the wafers of the Eucharist and then decided to keep it rather than to eat it. Because of the other mouse's pious respect for the holy water, God gave it wings and that it would be able to find plenty of food in the future. So it became a bat. Okay, I want to look at bat vortices. Bats all morning, all day, all night, 24/7, every minute. Bats are going in and out of caves because the sun is always setting and rising somewhere, and bats are everywhere across the globe. If you want to see bats, I'll show you. They're everywhere except for the Arctic and Antarctic. So therefore, all day long, there's bat vortexes, batnados is what I call it, batnado. The way that they go in and out. Do you mean batnado? I think I just invented that word. I don't know if it's real or not. Bat tornado. Yeah, they're really cool. Let's see some videos of these. Oh my gosh, I really want to experience this in my life for sure. Bang tornado of 20 million swarming bats. And this is just part of all the time. There's migrations all the time, constantly. The greatest migrations happen at night, and in the ocean every night, and especially around full moons. There's huge migrations of squids. I think that's the largest migration that happens in the world. But what I wanted to see is a live tracker migration app or something that shows when big, huge swaths of different animals are migrating from place to place. Because I've always been interested just to know. Like I posted a video on my Facebook earlier of somewhere in the world, whales are sleeping and they sleep like vertically and it's super creepy. And it got like 300 shares. I was like, whoa. Yeah, look at that. Because they can just, it's the best way. It is liquid. It's like liquid. It's like water moving out of a drain. It moves in a vortex. It's the most efficient way for the fluid to move. So in fluid dynamics, that's true, and in birkeland currents, that's true too. That's why they move in cylindrical spiral patterns along different sheets, the charge along different membranes. So bats move in that in a double helix type of helical spiraling pattern oftentimes. And it's cool to think about them doing that all the time. So Ramon, here. You said you had some stuff you wanted to show. I saw you shared let me go to the chat here. Oh, because that's my Illustrator. Okay, so this is an image of the bat. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now you can see the bat's wing along this circle, which happens to be the first gate, which happens to be the right hand. off of the center, um, and whether it's the right hand or left hand of the animal doesn't matter. I'm trying to talk across barriers here to try to explain what's happening here, and I refer to this as the first gate because that's the first sphere off. So incorporating the bat, putting it right directly in the center, you have this circle that follows the aerodynamics of it. Then it goes in through this pinch, comes out of the pinch, comes up like this, and comes down like this, pinches and comes back out. So this flow is a natural flow here, also inside the Doherty set and the Doherty network. So we can use this as once again, as a predictive analytic tool. We can use the Doherty set as predictive analytic tool to show vortex dynamics, and not only in robotics but also in future technologies, because it's already inherent in there. The more we see that's inherent inside the set, the more we see that we can do and build with it, building space bridges and plasma tubes and much more advanced things, tapping into the universal internet. I think we're going to be bored pretty soon here, and we've said this before in our civilization, until new things blossom, but we're going to be we can't travel past the speed of light. There's all sorts of different types. I know there's FTL, faster than light things, and faster than light speeds, but we cannot go into the universal internet and be universal bearing creatures without developing some other way of moving through the network. And this other way of moving through the network involves the simple vessel function dynamics of repetition, of the cascade of the Doherty set here. So that's that. Let me, I think Ramon, let me get out of here.
Yes.
You posted a couple of these. Should I open them?
Oh, the second one, no.
Okay, I'll open
I forget what the first one was.
Okay, well, look at that ad. Boom.
Oh, yes, this is a video why neutron stars are not possible.
Okay.
The poignant part's towards the middle, obviously. He shows, I mean, it only gets to about 6,000 RPM and then it splits apart. And that's something that's bonded to itself. So you're talking about neutrons, they don't like each other and have no reason to, freely clump together. It's a pretty ridiculous idea.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah.
It explodes, holy crap.
Yeah, spontaneously. Now we already knew about that, but it bears repeating for people who had never that's what happens.
Boom!
Yeah,
Oh,
just
vision. Yes. He almost got it right on the line there. Yeah, that's cool. Slow-mo guys. Oh yeah, they'll give you a mark real quick.
yeah, I wouldn't play the whole thing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I just played a little bit, luckily. So, all right. Well, I don't have too much today. That was just a short presentation. Maybe people will like our shows a little smaller, but I did want to talk a little bit. I mean, we can talk about conspiracies or whatever you guys want to talk about.
Well, I'm not prepared to make a presentation today, but at some point I do want to talk about the new, so-called new. I mean, obviously it's ancient, but the text I've stumbled across, Inky and the World Order, and it's providing the support for the research that I've been doing. But I don't have a slideshow presentation put together or anything. So if you want to find the document, that's fine by me. It's it's like 6 pages of translated material. It's been translated for quite some time, actually. And it gets less play than I suppose you would say, the Enuma Elish or something like that. But it's a fantastic little text.
Yeah, if you have a link or something where I can find it.
It literally it's the top search result. If you just look up Inky in the world order, it's the top one right off Google.
You want me to read it, or you want to read it, or talk about it?
No, I don't think we have to. I think the most pertinent things that came out for me. There's an entire paragraph where Inky it proves itself that Inky is not an individual. And the reason that we can see this is because Inky says in the same paragraph, I am the firstborn of An. And then he also says, Enlil is my elder brother, which of course is impossible.
Okay.
And for me, that was pretty huge of a moment.
Well, I just don't know all of this yet. I know Dan Winter gets into it and quite a bit of other people, but I don't know how much to believe and where I can actually understand it or not. I don't know the ground.
This is a scholarly translated paper, so there's no stitch in here, and it's just very straightforward. That's an illogicism. You can't be the firstborn and have an older sister.
What is the source material? Where does it come from? I'm interested.
It's Sumerian. This is an ancient tablet.
Okay, because I know a lot of people talk about it, but I just don't know where their knowledge of it comes from. I thought it was just thought up or something. I didn't know. No,
this is serious Sumerology. So this is a scholarly work.
Oxford's been going crazy with translations lately. Rex has been reading a lot of translations that Oxford's been doing, and it's all ancient tablets, buddy. It's all these stone tablets that are sitting in museums. This is where they're getting that information from.
Okay. All right. Because I thought a lot of it came from John Key or Shakespeare. What's that guy that they talk about? John D.
Oh, John D. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a serious piece, and that's the first revelation. So I want people to wrap their heads around it. The Sumerian text that a lot of these alien people are citing says very specifically, Anu, I am the firstborn son of Anu, and Enlil is my elder brother. That only works in the star scenario. It doesn't work in the alien scenario. That's a very important point. And the second thing is, later on, it makes a differentiation between the ending section all talks about, and it's clear that it came later, it talks about Venus. And because it has a whole section devoted to Venus, earlier there's a section devoted to a different female goddess. And this female goddess specifically is said to be Dapple's spotted face, but with a face covered like syrup. Now, if you do an image search, a Google image search for the moon Titan, it's the only body I can think of that fits both descriptions. So Titan is a Saturnian moon. And this leads me to suspect that is the only body that it can be talking about. And the third revelation in there is that I think it is becoming clear that the planet Uranus is actually our Nibiru, because it says in the text that Jupiter transfers gold. It says in Leo, transfers the gold and silver to Nibiru, and as in they could physically see it happening. And if you think about it, there is a strange similarity of the coloration between Uranus and, and what the color that the Welsh called melon, meaning a kind of a gold brown. And I think that they could actually see the material when the planet came in being siphoned off of Jupiter right to this foreign body. And there's another Sumerian text which says that Neptune, the goddess who is Neptune, beckoned in Nibiru as if it was like a child. And then Marduk, who is of course Jupiter, says, "Come and be my son," as in my child, not my star. And this kind of thing is making it very clear. So as the research goes, slowly but surely, the electric universe is playing out, but the alien hypothesis is not playing out, which is, you want your science to play out. I mean, that's the way that goes.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog walked through if you heard a bell.
I did, but it didn't bother me at all. So this is actually pretty exciting stuff. I know it doesn't seem very exciting, but it's within 6 pages. It clears up a huge number of points. And I mean, I got lucky. I just keep subscribing to people even if I think that they're wrong. And so this was covered by the ancient alien guy, and I said, well, rather than listen to this guy, I'm just going to go read the text. And didn't seem to me that it gave the same impression.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say it's interesting that I post this at the same time he's talking about this very thing, in a different respect. The Ray and the Ra, the two Ds, the plates, the rarefaction plates basically of the octave exchange that, pretty much compression, rarefactions, our whole entire universe, and especially the plane that we're in. The Ra and the Ray, you're talking about two different octave exchanges. And then here, it's showing that you need the ACG, the ACE, the EGB. If you look at these, look at the math and the dynamics in it. The times 3, gives you the F multiplied by 3 is C3. See what I'm getting at? But yet you multiply the C3 by 3 and you get G9. Now, if you look at the fact that we're held in a G quadrant and we're supposed to be in a C, moving at from an idle, right? The idle mind is devil's workshop. And we should be in a C. Our planet should be spinning a little bit more to return prime waters. That's one of the reasons why we're going into maximum density overload right now. And if we don't take care of this problem, or it doesn't take care of itself, we will have a catastrophe to deal with. But I thought it very interesting.
The water, it does talk about the water as well.
Thank you.
So that's interesting to bring it up.
Yeah, and then at the same time, and then the Ra and the Ray. Now, this is what I found was interesting when I went to the Ra and the Ray. Now, Ra, the Egyptian sun god, correct? And then you have Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. So you got the Ra and the Ray. You have the power movement of the Ra. And also the Do, Re, which is the harmonic. One is forced through the other one, I believe, is the sympathetic resonance. And then I looked at back in the time of Akhenaten, when you had Tutankhamun, King Tut, the boy that was made king. They murdered his father because he was giving away all of Egypt. So they thought, the priesthood did. And this is where I found that not only did the priesthood get perverted, but the actual sounds and the structure went from harmonics, Akhenaten. All right, this all stemmed from the, the dagger that was given to King Tut's dagger, correct? You've heard of King Tut's dagger, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like old as shit and it's got no rust on it. How can you have a metal that's 99.99% pure Halil metal, iron that isn't rusted at all over 2,800, 5,800 years now? So there was made by Ethiopian tribe, give to Akhenaten, his father. Now his father give it to the boy. Obviously, I mean, I don't know how many here have boys, but my boys have my knife collections.
Was it immediate?
So why wouldn't a father give his son a knife? That being said, I started looking at the nickel contents and all these different things that were in it, and in that's when I realized that the perversion happened. Think about the timeline. You murder a very benevolent king, Pharaoh, who's giving away parts of the world that he's like, yeah, you guys done enough for me. Go ahead, just, whatever, keep doing trading with me and we'll be fine. And the priests were like, whoa, wait a minute here. You're cutting into our take. We get 10% of everything. If you're telling them they don't have to pay it no more, that's our money too. See what I mean? And they kept trying to warn him not to do this, not to do this. Well, they finally murdered him and poisoned him. And now think about it. Now you've got a boy king who is 7, 8 to 9 years old. They speculate. You raised him up as a ruler and not as a leader. Does that make sense? And that's when
that's how you easily control them. That's a common way to keep control. Is you cease to teach them even any martial arts or anything that would enable them to possibly get back their own power.
Yeah,
very ancient.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add something. Hang on. I just wanted to add something about Lord Enki. Lord Enki is named the mountain of water that was at the North Pole.
Right.
You know Kronos. His
which
YouTube
is
channel.
interesting to bring that up. I forgot about that.
Kronos reads a description of that exact phrase, saying that Lord Enki is the mountain of water.
No, this text makes it very clear that Enlil is the mountain. It makes it says it's very straightforward. It says Enlil,
that would also make sense mountain. The timeline.
Enki is Saturn, but apparently Zeus was Olympus, so they were one and the same. Maybe before that.
Look at them. Look at that. What you're saying right now, the both of you. Look at what you're saying and put it in the context of the first North Pole. We're moving into our fourth pole exchange. We already have 3. All right. One was in the Hudson Bay, the one where it's at now, and the other one very well could have been Mount Olympus, the Enki. Follow me? That if he was the mountain of the waters, then he would have therefore been the very first North Pole. And by all means, I would look at a king who didn't want to give up his reign. And each time that these Jeds come along, these power struggles of the millennials, the half processions, 13,000-year cycles. I can see why Jehovah, like right now, Jupiter's struggling to hold on to its power. It doesn't want to give up power to Uranus, but yet it's still been stripped of it. And so is Saturn losing its rings. You know what I mean?
Well, I sort of understand what you're talking about. By power, what exactly are you meaning?
Influence. I mean, influence. Okay, if you have 3 magnets, and one big magnet is larger than the other 2, but the other 2 are much closer, those 2 are going to interact more. Okay, the outside influence of the larger magnetism is apparent, but once you start bringing a larger magnet in to make it a trilogy of exchange, now this triangulation, you're going to start see the 2 do a dance in accordance to the pull of the third. That's basically what Sirius A, B, and C are doing. A is the largest one, B is the second component, C is the third component, which is our sun. In this case, what we're talking about here is Saturn, Polaris, and the moon, and or the first part of creation, just before Saturn's moon was stripped and given to us. That was our punishment. In a lasso, basically a huge solar flare looped out so much that the magnetic pole stripped the moon from Saturn. That's why we have
I have a
Good.
different take on that, which is
Go
that
ahead,
we
please.
blame ourselves things
I
that
like
weren't
both
really beyond our control.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I like both perspectives because that's a new one I haven't heard. But yeah, what I think is I call it spaghettification in a way, where the planets are being stripped like bar magnets through tubes of Birkeland currents, and the tubes interact as they pass by each other and align, and we understand that, through alignments and different things. It's not just
I'm looking over Cronus's YouTube videos right now on Enki, the Lord of the Two Rivers. I'll get back to you on that.
And this probably has a lot to do with Indra and stopping.
Of course it does.
Yeah, stopping it from rain, and raining, and being the rain god and thunder, and that's why they stopped worshiping Indra. Because
well, no, I think quite differently. It seems to me that what's happened is that Vishnu became Indra, became Shiva, and there's an evolution in their characters, because the different so-called sons,
Indras are
they were they were related, but the natures changed, and that change in nature appears to mostly reflect the changing which body was the dominant in the sky. And sometimes when they weren't around, people would they would anthropomorphize, and then later on, when a new body became dominant in the sky, like Mars, it would take up its father's stuff. Like Thor was originally a Jupiter, but once Mars came around, Thor became it, and Jupiter was combined. The tradition was combined with that of Woden, and became Odin, and they became father and son. But a lot of Thor's powers, because these myths were written down much later, a lot of Thor's powers are actually Jupiter's powers. So how do you account for the two of them? Because obviously Thor is mostly a Heraclean, an Ares-like character who moves about and does all these great feats and has feats of great strength. But the greatest strength was in the age of the megaliths, when the gravity was obviously altered and they could build these huge stones in the Baalbek. So how do you account for this? Well, when the people couldn't see it anymore, they ceased to worship it the same. And in fact, he brought up, the era of Ramses and also Tutankhamun. Well, they had tried going back to worshiping the old gods, and of course, it did probably cut into their income. But it was probably also hard to imagine worshiping a god that had previously been overthrown and having all this incest and everything. And it was probably considered heresy, because there was probably a newer god that had been in the sky and had been near. And this text is very short, and that's one of its better benefits is it gets right to the point. It's also very old, and so it is one of our newest primal sources that we can dig into. There's a lot of information encoded in it, which I hadn't seen anywhere else, to be frank. And being in plain language for the most part, for example, it solves a lot of the stuff about Venus, and makes it very clear that she, part of her problem is that she had no particular orbit. She says multiple times, why do my sisters have an orbit? And then it says that she's the only daughter. So she says my sisters, but then I'm the only daughter, and asks repeatedly of Enki why she doesn't have a function. So now we know that Venus had to have come from Saturn, A, and B, that there was a problem with Venus's orbit. So Velikovsky is correct. But what Velikovsky appears not to be correct, based on the document goes into talking about Mana, is that it wasn't Venus that dropped the hydrocarbons. It may have been Titan. And that would probably explain the difficulty there that he had. Because, he was right about a lot of things, but he wasn't so right about the hydrocarbons on Venus, or in Venus's atmosphere. And again, you know, sometimes she's the only female goddess, and then other times there's a whole bunch of them. So it is, how do you account for this? Not with biology. They're talking about something completely different.
That would make sense why Venus is so influenced by Mars, by all the planets. You know what I mean? And if you notice, she's always the one in all the biblical texts or any extra biblical text, you know, in any sacred text, she's always amazingly the one who's handing over the baton. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's the one who just took away the ruling house of Jupiter and then gave it to Aquarius. So, you know what I mean? She's the one who's the go-between. And though she doesn't have, like you said, her own place. Kind of interesting that she's used a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hope people take a look, because there's a lot of really good data in this text.
Well, if you look at a lot of people want to be so literal with shit, and if you look at and then not only that, but let's go with the fact of the limited paradigm of being able to, I think one of us had mentioned, I'm not sure who it was, but Mark talked about the fact that would correlate with the house of Leo at that time. See, and we got to remember that certain things aren't like they are today. You know what I mean? Like Noah's flood wasn't this passive little tiny flood that just kind of went by, and there was a little giraffe sticking his head out of the boat, and everything was great and ducky dory. No, there was great catastrophes. That's why you have scallops and sea crustaceans and stuff at the top of mountains. I mean, this is just insane that people think that this is all placid like we have today. And this new zeitgate that we're going through, and this fourth turn of events, just like the screw does, the wing nut coming off of the screw, we're coming into the fourth one. That means we move into a zeitgate, and it doesn't just flip once; it'll do a Z-gate in there. And that's what we're going into. And as the Lord says, he says, I will shake the foundations of the earth like they've never known before.
Right.
I mean, this is going to be a really hair-raising moment we're coming into, people. It's exciting and, going to be a little traumatizing, too, for some. If you're not a Youper.
Yeah.
Well, but might be good. Maybe people need to be shaken up.
Shake it up, pack it up, stack it up. No, really, we really do need our cage rattled. You're absolutely right. That's a bar none, man. We need to get our attention. Polarity thinking is going to be gone. The stuff we talk about with field equations and field harmonics and field energy exchanges is going to be literally the new norm, the new normal of things.
You mean dualistic thinking, right?
Yeah, dualistic thinking, where you have to be
polarities. There's a relationship that's inherent in polarity. Dualism is very separate. I think that's what you mean.
And yes, indeed, that's exactly what I'm saying. And isn't it interesting that we're moving out of Polaris? Polaris is no longer going to be our pole star. So Beta Sirius B will then be, and that's in the flip gate. See, that's why I couldn't quite understand that until I understood the Zeitgate flip that we're going into. And then Sirius B becomes our new pole star. Well, we're going to receive from Sirius A, which is our A augmented light. That's vitamin A. We should never be taking beta-carotene in a substrated materialistic manner, like, through sweet potatoes, oranges, squash, melon. That should all come through a variant of augmented light, through DC current. But I digress.
So, one of the things that I thought of was...
Anything?
Sorry, I don't know if you went off or not, or stopped talking. Were you done talking, Brian? He might have lost service.
Lost him.
But diatomaceous earth here, I was thinking about this. My dad and I were talking about this earlier. And diatomite and diatoms and ingesting and eating them, and diatomaceous earth. Interesting stuff, and it made me think of manna when you were talking about manna. And then
Hello?
There, Brian's back, and I was talking about the April 8th, 2024 flip that you were talking about. When
Somehow or another, somebody got in, and I don't know, the last part of that got cut off from me. And he goes, I know you're not talking to me. And I'm like, well, no, not now. Get off my line. You know what I mean? Yeah. My phone just answered it. That's what's happening. That's literally what's happening. We are coming into that right there. That's between 2022 and 2024. It begins in 2022, and we have an open gate. And that's literally, we got Cosmic Sojourner here in this group. He's got a beautiful CAD program. I was talking to him much earlier today, like in the AM, and he's got a beautiful CAD programming out that literally shows exactly what I'm talking about. So where you could take it and show anybody how the entire universe is going to be pulling on us in our Mona Parabola. And we're, in the midst of our wobble, we're going to go from a torque pull from one end, from east to west. And that's going to allow us to be influenced by anything around us, the bigger magnets. That's what we're going to. And then we're going to Z-gate, because we're literally going to be in a free-for-all stall. And then that Z-gate happens. And we're just going to be shaken up like a can of pop, man. And then God's going to pop the top. And, I don't know where that North Pole is going to be at, guys, but it's going to be an interesting moment. What is this you got up, buddy? The little yellow ribbons going around the Earth.
Oh, that was different solar eclipses. Different year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was maybe the different possibilities of our new spin trajectories. Because that's what I'm wondering, is when we all stop this Z-gate, a to and fro and a flip and a frop, and, and we end up spinning in an opposite rotation. Like I said, it was once in the Hudson Bay. It's now the North Pole where it's at. And I speculate that it was somewhere over in India, in Siberia area, was the very first North Pole that we had. That's what and then here now, you bring up this context of Inky being the mountain of the North Pole, the waters. I'm just saying, it all lining up for me. I'm wondering where the next one's going to be at. Where is our next North Pole going to be? It's obviously not going to be the South Pole. It's either going to be Bermuda or Zealand. That's what I figure. It's either going to be New Zealand area where, the fault line is there that, is spewing out, and or the Bermuda area.
I found that passage. It's the Great Mountain Enlil, not Enki.
Enlil.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The Great Mountain of Water was Enlil.
Now, where was that located at then? Do you have geographics on that, sir?
It was in the north. That great mountain was in the north. It was Mount Olympus.
So that would be like in Greece then?
No, Olympus was in the north.
No, it was a tower of plasma that went between the Earth when we were hosted by, after 7,000 years ago event. We were hosted by Jupiter instead of Saturn.
Yep.
And
he took over the polar configuration for a number of years.
And they're calling him an elder brother is a bad translation. Really, he's the senior brother, if that makes sense. And being the senior brother is a matter of designation rather than age.
But the mountain of water that was being pulled up off of the Earth 100 or 200 miles into space in this polar configuration do the electrical connection. When all that disconnected, you get your flood that washed over all of the land surfaces on the planet.
That would make sense. If you're cutting the flow, the drop of whatever the weight, the matter is going to hit the Earth.
A lot of the water was being attracted to the polar configuration, and when it disconnected, when Jupiter finally said, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya, then all hell broke loose, along with thunderbolts that, made it rain for 40 days and 40 nights.
And therefore, I was just watching this video on the shifting of the plates, and how they're literally showed like stretch marks in a fat lady when she gets pregnant, a pregnant lady in her belly, and how they're showing the plates actually, did that. You know what I mean? That they're actually pushed apart, and you can see the striation lines as they're like, molten magma.
The Earth expanded. The Earth definitely expanded, and you can think of it expanding kind of like a rose, or take your hand, put your fingers and ball them up like you're holding a ball, and then open your fingers up the same way. That's how the Earth expanded. At the South Pole are more stretch marks and more fissures and fractures than in the North.
Yes. That I don't know if you watched the same video or not. Like literally, you're almost describing the animations that I was looking at. Yeah, no, it unfolded. It unfolded like a flower opening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally, and then like if you look at it that way, you could look at the very center core of the Earth's pole, whether it be plasmatic, whether it be ethereal energy, a flow of energy seen or unseen. It would be the stamina, the stamen. That would be the male end that generated, or as you said, the fountain that was flowing. I mean, we all know what a gusher is. When we're happy.
we know Birkeland currents are connected to the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Physically connected to the Earth, and they provide 10 million amps of energy to the Earth every second of every day.
Yeah,
that energy goes down into the core through the North and South poles and feeds a plasmoid that is at the center of the Earth, I think, and that provides the heat and the pressure for an expansion event. When we disconnected from Saturn or Jupiter, when we disconnected from the polar alignment to
there's proofs in that because of the color that we had in when Saturn ruled the skies, they called it the sun. And there's proofs of that there was green hues, which why everything was larger and all that. Back in those times, they actually report the green hue that was, in our atmospheres. And that Saturn was revered as a sun, and then the sun came along and basically stole the torch.
Well, the first mention of blue ever is 4300 BC.
Well, yeah. What about the blue that was actually in Egypt? There was a certain type of blue that they attained and painted on things, and we didn't get blue pigment until way after that, right? Again,
what's interesting about that, buddy, is that dye is chemically related to Han purple, and Han purple is useful in superconductors.
Is that the same dye that they pulled out of the mollusks or the octopus or whatever? Remember, I'm talking about. They would have to deep sea dive that.
I don't know. It's mystery where Han purple came from. But the color was found to be on the terracotta warriors.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I'll be right back. I got to take that phone call from earlier, but I just wanted to catch in on that conversation, and I'm not going to be gone for long. I'll see you in a moment, guys.
Okay, so let's see these stretch marks.
I wanted to go back to that because. In one of my papers, I talk about the Earth growing like a tomato on a vine. I call it the electrothermal vine because it's heat and electrical energy that's arriving to the Earth on both poles. But there are actually several ways that we can achieve crustal displacement, crustal collapse, crustal expansion. All of them, of course, need massive energy. But there's a lot of different ways that could have happened. It does appear that there was a growth event, and that was most likely the reason the Azores sank really suddenly and the end of the Atlanteans. But it may not be the only way. There may have been general, as a big body like Jupiter goes by, it would lift up the crust too. So you would have this rolling wave of crustal uplift, tidal uplift, and that would cause, incessant. The god would be angry. The god would be stomping his foot, the god's thunderbolts, etc., the shaking of the ground anytime we pass near, because we weren't in a stable orbit around Jupiter. And so being in an elliptical orbit around Jupiter, the god would move about the sky, which caused a lot of vexation because they really wanted Enlil or Zeus to sit on his throne. They had a real, they were very upset.
Saturn used to sit on the throne up at the North Pole.
Exactly. And then that's when things were good and stable. And in this document, the Enki and the World Order makes it very clear that in the Golden Age with Enki, who was the firstborn son of On, meaning the first planet that formed, and it was the Lord of Diadems. It's very clear that the Lord of Diadems is definitely Enki and not Enlil. And so we see that the rings formed early. The waters came from Saturn. It says that Enki is the provider of waters, the provider of food, the provider of the semen. Ultimately, all the things came
the waters
from
flowed from Enki's shoulders.
And yet Enlil is considered the Lord. Now that's pretty messed up, but it's the way it was. And this text is the bridge that we've been looking for. It is an absolute gem. It really is. And it's older than the Egyptian coffin texts, etc.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that.
No problem. Hey, you know what? I just listened to the ancient alien people and look for ways to debunk them.
Yeah, I'm glad to have it on the show here, and we're going to post it here in the link for anybody who's interested, also on YouTube and wherever else we decide to put this podcast.
Yeah, I will be doing a show on it with Greg probably this week. It'll be up to him when he wants to do that show. I will produce some kind of slideshow for everyone. But nice. You guys have ahead of time. You'll be able to go through and see what I'm talking about. I mean, when it said, jumped right out, I'm the firstborn son of On. And Leo is the elder brother. I was like, whoa, hold up. Biology 101. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. But it does if you're two solar bodies that split from the same star.
Look at this major rift and this crazy uplift in this vortex, this one spinning this way and one spinning this way.
I'm not seeing anything. I see YouTube search results. That's all I see.
Oh. All right.
There you go.
You're up now. I can see that.
Yeah, look at that, dude.
I can't. I don't know why. It's okay. I'm on a phone anyway. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there's the vortex right here going that way. Here's a vortex going that way. Uplift, major rifts, major huge. What is this? What is this off of? Australia? Australia, okay. So it's like this spot right here. Look at that. This arm coming in that way. This arm coming in that way. It's like that's more than just a volcanic spot. That's a vortex right there.
Yeah, that's a landmass like being spun around, moved around by the electric forces that are being applied on the globe.
So it's Western Division and Northern Division. Okay, Nadi, what is?
I wonder if that was the South Pole for when Siberia was the what I mean, when that was the North Pole, because that literally almost looks like a molten scribble as it was hardening. You know what I mean? Like the Earth caught it as it was spinning, and there's a vortice, and it caught it cooling, as it was in liquid magma form and tectonic movement, I guess would be a way to put it.
I've never heard of these islands. Are these these aren't the Philippine Islands? No. New Caledonia. What's over here? New Zealand. Okay. So it's off in New Zealand.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird, strange pole marks and weird weird stuff going on in the southern pole regions. Not like
Yeah,
the
it's
north.
like
The North Pole has like three lines, and that's how, like three lobes, and it kind of broke open on those three lobes, and a lot of matter pushed out through the southern pole area, and that's how the Earth expanded, I think.
Okay, let me get the Earth reoriented here. So
Well, if
there
you
we
look
go.
at the fact of what you said earlier about, and all the evidence of, and as I was saying, what I've seen of the folding and then the unfolding like a flower, and if you do that while something is spinning, you know, I'm getting at. I'm seeing that all the evidence is showing right there at the bottom end of the Earth. You know what I mean? That it opened up like a flower.
It doesn't
And as
require spin. All of that motion doesn't require spin. All it requires is a thunderbolt of the god sitting there going, moving stuff around. Like if you look at some of the experiments that Jacob Gable does, and some of the Electric Universe followers, like Electric Universe eyes, you can see the stuff moving around in the dish, just spinning around,
Yes.
moving.
What is-
So
I'll go with that. I'll go with that. The swirling of energy.
it doesn't even require a spin of a globe to make those kind of movements and motions.
What you're saying, saying is the energy itself of vortices.
What if you guys look at this?
But we can't eliminate spin. There's always spin in there. The particles are spinning. The electricity is spinning. All of it's spinning.
Yeah, and when the arc is moving from one side, say look at Australia. The arc is moving from one side of Australia to the other side of Australia in not much time at all, and it just induces a spin or a movement of that landmass, and pulling it over this way or pushing it over this way or spinning it, or it does. The electric force doesn't require any spin or any gravity or anything. It does it all by itself.
I have a theory, and I don't know if this has ever been thought of, but I looked at this and I wondered if there's a mass of land underneath Antarctica, right? There is.
Yeah, there is a landmass under there.
There's a continent there.
This is the South Pole,
and that's the origin of Hyperborea.
Okay, so this is what I want to propose. Maybe when the poles tilt, it freezes new ice and creates new land and pulls the land up on two new spots. And when the poles shift and create new land masses, because if you look at the land masses, they're pretty similar. Like this could be a whole North Pole or South Pole right there. Once this was the North Pole, and then the opposite side would be over here, and there would be the South Pole, and it created this land here and pulled this land up. Because look at how similar Australia looks like, and it's now scorched. And we know that climate change is always happening, right, guys? Because the climate is always changing. But because the poles shift, but there's regularities, but anyway. So if you look at this, I can envision this being ice at one time, because it looks similar. It has the just similar body kind of structure as so many of the other land masses. And maybe this was all ice once, and then the other side of the world, which would be Australia, was ice.
Well, that would make sense, and that would kind of like show the Hudson Bay one then. Like Australia might have been the South Pole to Hudson's Bay North Pole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As it's gouging out on the top, it's creating new land at the bottom. That's an interesting theory.
Because like new land.
See, because right there's a Hudson Bay. See the bowl of the Hudson Bay right above Michigan. You know where the inlet is. That was our last North Pole.
Okay.
And then before that, the math for me and all the evidence is showing over above India, in Siberia's region, and was the predecessor before that pole. So that would be the first one, and that would be Inlay or Inca. You know, I mean, Inlay, like they said, the mountain that was the north. You know, the waters.
The mountain
that
of water
out.
that was called
Inla. So looking at it, regularly oriented. Yeah, let's get into the real story of what you guys are talking about, because these are stories from around the world. And the last episode, this would have been cool to pull up the globe because we did turtles all the way down, stacked on top of each other. But for this one, we're talking about Enki and Lil and what these stories are, where's the origin of them. So let's go to the origin of where they come from, and then we'll look up north from where that is, right? Right?
Well, you see that there may be an issue with that kind of thinking, because if the Earth had flipped, then
yes, the Earth did flip. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I was getting at. If you look at the Australian Dreamtime images, you can see that, and all of the hang on, buddy. If you look at all of the images, all the rock art, all South America, North America, everywhere around the world, it all has an obstruction to looking to the south for protection. So you have all of this. Go ahead, buddy.
This is my rebuttal, or this is my understanding. The astrological alignment would not work in the equatorial equinoxes with all of the old structures that were built if the Earth were to flip poles and keeps flipping poles, unless it stays on tilt with the annual and spring equinoxes, because you can see it moving the sun lighting up with it.
The poles didn't flip. The Earth had flipped.
What if the flip? What if the flip? Now my math.
I'm done.
Wait a second, buddy. Say that again, because I want to understand what you're saying before anybody rebuts it. What did you say?
Okay, now if the Earth would and does keep flipping and has in the past, then we would not be on the same alignment of I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but the equinoxes, when the sun rises in certain places along the alignment of the Peru.
You're correct.
Egyptian.
The Chinese did say that it changed. Yes, you're correct.
Right now, it's aligned still. It's aligned still, right?
What is aligned?
All of it. What I mean is when the sun sets, we can see it set in between the temples in Peru. We can see the sun set.
All those things were built later.
Yeah, all that stuff was built after the flip, bro.
It's built after
the flip.
Yeah.
Because that was.
So let's take the Hopewell. Okay. Here's the interesting thing. The Hopewell, when they encoded the Jovian octagon, meaning that we had seen the North Pole of Jupiter, which meant that the Earth was upside down. They recorded it and later built the site. But when they built the site, they aligned the new site to the new equinoxes to respect the new god, which was, of course, Apollo, or whatever they called it. So they changed the angles. And you'll note that Stonehenge and the Hopewell site, Adena sites, etc., are all younger than when the Chinese said that the flip happened.
Yep.
Okay. So the Chinese know that it flipped and have it documented.
Yes. Oh, yes. Quite clearly. They had a series of emperors who had to deal with the inundating waters that had washed up into the middle of China and were still continuously coming down and flooding. And they sent out astrologers to tell the farmers when the seasons would start, because the farmers who would never need help from the court on such a thing, the seasons were out of order. And it's in the Bible. The flip was in the Bible, and it's also in the Mayan.
Right. So let's look at this then. Okay. So let's look at this. This is America. This is America. And here we were supposing that the North Pole was a little closer here, which if you look at this shape and you look at mimicry, that shape is pretty much identical to this shape right here. It's very similar. It's not identical, but it has the same shapes. And I go a lot by shapes and like what is a limb doing here? Why is the limb twisting this way? Why is the limb moving that way? Why is the peninsula? I'm a shape guy. This is the geometric view. So let's say that this Hudson Bay was the North Pole, and then that a plasma event happened and created all of a bunch of stuff. Did the plasma event happen simultaneously with the flip and the flood, or was that
probably not? Probably not. It's probably a series of different types of events. The event that you're talking about up here were very large chunks of rocks electrically exploding in the area. We actually have the bolide evidence. We have examples of fracturing. We have the craters, and we have the electrical with the craters. So we have electrical craters. We have regular craters, which I mean kinetic. We have all of those events happening. And in that great flood and that event apparently preceded the rule of Enlil.
Well, if you look at Andrew Hall's work in the southwest of America, that's the positive side of the thunderbolt. And if you look at the Great Lakes and James Bay and Hudson's Bay, that's the negative side. That's being James Bay and the Great Lakes were etched out, and a lot of the material
without a reliable way to age, that could have all been in the Genesis. This is what I've tried to explain to many people. The kind of electricity that you're talking about is several orders stronger than the thunderbolts that came from Jupiter.
Right, you got to remember, Genesis was only 6,000 years ago in the Bible's eyes.
But the Bible is inherited from the Babylonians, who inherited it from the the Sumerians. That's not the point. That's missing the point completely. Let's not add the religion to it. The magnitude. Just look at the size. The size of the events that you're talking about are orders above the size of the thunderbolts that came from Jupiter and Venus. That's what I'm saying. So you're talking about.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that.
I am sure about it, because I've calculated the sizes of the thunderbolts, and I'm telling you that the one that is here in this state, and the one that created the Garden of the Gods, Illinois, they are smaller by several orders of magnitude than even the one that made the Grand Canyon. And the one that made the Grand Canyon.
Are you talking about the one at the Ring of Fire over there in Montana and all that?
We haven't gotten to that, but we certainly could. But I'm making a point. The size that you're talking about.
I'm trying to catch up. I just got back on the call.
I understand. The energy that you're talking about is a continuous stroke circuit.
Yep.
That means that it's a continuous beam, and it's also
continuous arc.
Large. Yes, it's very large. That would almost certainly have been during the Saturnian age, or don't forget, for a little bit there, Neptune was kind of a god in the sky as well. Poseidon was worshipped for the danger that it posed, but I don't think that we were struck directly by Poseidon. I don't know for sure, but
now that would literally give rise to the proofs of what I've been seeing in sacred texts and stuff about how we ended up with Saturn's moon, and why it has the 666 influence and rings off of Saturn, which rings off of Polaris. Now, you know what I mean? If you
based on the Enuma Elish, that our moon is a Jovian body, because Jupiter, it fits the geology of the Jovian bodies. It looks exactly like Mercury and Ganymede and those others. And it's in the Enuma Elish that Marduk installed the Watcher over us. It is electrically attracted to us.
Jupiter.
So you're saying it came from Jupiter instead of Saturn?
Yeah.
It's it's almost a certainty.
I won't even argue that at all, man. All I know is it's got Saturn's influences on it, and that would be interesting if what you're saying, and everybody, you know, like you said, if conjecture is that, and it comes from.
Well, it's a good point. There's a point there, because when Saturn and Jupiter were one star, then all of the bodies would have belonged to On. All of them would have belonged to On.
That would make sense why you would have the influence on it.
Yes.
In that respect, wow, that's a different thought pattern on it, and add something to the measure of where I've been finding, you know, because there's no doubt about it. We stole it. It was put there, you know what I mean, for us, because it's easier to explain the moon not being there than it being there.
Dude.
And the orbit and everything is unnatural.
I agree with that. I agree.
Okay. I'm glad we can agree. Bailey, quit scratching. I just pulled up on this image here. Look at this. I'm zooming in. This is in Canada. And all these lakes are going this way. perfectly obviously scarred, some sort of a scarification here,
Mhm.
or windswept or something, but all of them are moving that way. Then you zoom out, all these are moving this way. Okay, you see a flow. All these lakes over here are moving this way. Then you can see them move this way and go around like this. And these ones are clearly windswept or marred or something. Holy shit.
Yeah, there
That's
were a
some cool-
lot of blasts. That's pretty heavy stuff. I mean,
There
the
was a lot of
blast.
rock.
Yeah.
You got to remember, buddy. Not only these lightning bolts were exchanged, or these thunderbolts of the gods were exchanged between worlds. If you look at some of the videos of the experiments done by the Electric Universe guys, you can see massive chunks of material coming off of these spheres of clay that he's arcing to. That's what happens in planets too. Look at Mars, Valley Marineris. Massive chunks of it are floating around in the solar system to this day.
Yeah.
It gets ejected and it gets
picked up a lot of
splashed onto the
material.
other world that it's being thunderbolted to. Sorry, go ahead, Raymond.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Venus stole a huge amount of material. There's evidence that there are huge fluvian or diluvian events on Mars. They just came out, and the kind of water is not present currently on Mars. So there had to be more, which increases the likelihood that there was life and that's where those compounds in Venus's atmosphere came from. And B, the water had to go somewhere. And the easiest way to explain that is electrostatic lift. When in the conjunction
and the fallen angels,
it lasted like 1,500 years off and on.
What if that
the
was
fallen angels were stripped off of the planet's surface and deposited
Correct.
here?
They became Valkyries.
What if that would be the bridge of Asgard that they referred to? And what if it was stretched from Mars to Earth? You know what I'm getting at? And we got the flood end when it was severed.
It's a glow mode connection. It's not an arc mode connection between two worlds.
What was that?
It's that column that shows.
What?
If you're looking up from the Earth, you can see this glow mode connection between Earth and Mars, and it was described as during the daytime it was a column of clouds stretching into the heavens. During the nighttime, it changed into a column of fire.
There were some between the gas giants. There were some. The plasma would occasionally arc, and it looked to them because of the distances. The arc could actually be seen moving from one body to the other. It looked like a war. It looked like being struck by the spear or the trident or the bow and arrow.
Clash of the Titans, man.
That would give us 2 points of history from Jericho, the walls of Jericho, and Sodom and Gomorrah. Those times it described those very exact same evidence. You know, I mean those times, and during the time of Tabernacle and the Moses.
Again, those events could have required much smaller bolts and would not necessarily have created massive continents, but it could very easily vaporize a city, very easily.
I'm just talking about like in a scaling, you know, that you're seeing evidences that you know, I mean, if it's as above as below as within without. So if it's at that measure, it obviously has to be capable at a larger measure. Thank you for that, Ray.
Yes,
yeah, definitely scalable. It's all scalable. Everything in the electric universe should be scalable.
And that's the frightening thing about thinking about the energy that was involved in moving these plates. There's also another thing, buddy, if you go back to the globe, is there is a skew of the continents towards the northern hemisphere. And Western sciences have not explained that adequately. And it seems to me that Antarctica was drawn to one end, and the other plates were pushed upwards through some kind of charge separation.
It seems to me that Antarctica was broken off of the side of South America or even North America and pulled down and swung 90 degrees.
Meanwhile, the rest, for the most part, formed an electric circuit and they were repelled, there's a lot more land area in the northern hemisphere than there is in the southern hemisphere. And it's also the older material. This is important. The oldest rock material that we can date.
Not only that, there's more ground itself, more earth.
There's more earth
in the northern hemisphere.
The oldest rock
not
is
land
in the
mass.
North American plate.
Not land mass. Thickness
Right here,
of
right?
soil is what I'm talking about, Raymond.
Yes, I know what you're saying, and what I'm agreeing with you is that the oldest material is also in the middle of the North American plate.
Right
and so
here.
there's some kind of tendency through the circuit to, as it grew on the vine, as the tomato grew on the vine, and when tomatoes get to their full ripeness, they start to split. There was a tendency to push the plates upwards. But there was attraction towards the Hyperborea that is now Antarctica.
Some places would submerge and other places would lift.
That reminds me of
process.
mitosis and meiosis, the splitting of the cells constantly. Yeah. 100%.
The scientists are not exactly clear. They just say the cell has collected enough material. I would say that it's collected enough charge in the form of ions and, of course, nutrients in order for the cell.
The show will resume after the short break. Thank you.
I will never fall, I will never be a better person. You can never see me, I can never be inside of that tree. I can never be inside that forest. You wanna see me, but I'm not seeing you. You wanna get where I am, then you can't not you. You can't not you. I don't wanna the most of the time I cried to divide the crackers when I got off and you never know what you think of a different stuff. I'm a bad thirst, I'm a different nerve, get the different girls in a cat. Perfect all around. And costing of an off. It's perfect because it's a perfect. Nobody get it off. Legally off. Piece of the pie. If you want a piece of that, you can have a piece of the pie. I'll give you that. I'll give you that much. If you want a piece of this, I'll give you a piece of me. Legally, I'm off of your soul. If you want a piece like me. The perfect cowboy. I'll give you a piece of me. Legally, I'm offering by the grain of stars. Sometimes it's like some moves you have on every dance floor do. Real smooth, it's like the moves you have on the dance floor. Real smooth. If you want to think you're real smooth on the dance floor, it's real smooth. I like some moves on the dance floor. Christ be in you, Christ be in all, Christ be in God, all of us, be in us as God is in one in all, as one flesh is one flesh. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dance floor.
The geometric view is a love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen. Thank you for joining us on episode 44. The rest of the show will resume after this short break.
fall. Eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the edifice embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There's nothing to do. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism, need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the fact, tertiary Christian neuron, synapses, and narrow entrance into eternity. I'm a courier of charismatic attitude, meters even neater, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, until you're rivet, you pivot, potential, you curve and cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best, could be Micro Racker, Mackie Normal, open-minded, itsy bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did it go? We don't got about a girl, but about a not about a goddess spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, chapter. We're playing on the head on foot. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang.
To now be capable of elongating along the fibrinogens, and to start constructing, there has to be enough charge built up and energy stored up. Of course, they look at it just in terms of ATP energy, but I mean, as we're talking about actual literal electrons.
Yeah, a mass of electrons being provided to a body in space should increase. I mean, if it has a magnetic field already, it should increase its magnetic field. It should increase the temperature and the pressure of that body is that body's interior, because it's a plasmoid that's running everything, that's pushing
What a
pressure on
frightening
the inside.
idea. What a frightening idea is if now that we're on a really powerful star instead of a small dwarf star, if the Earth is growing rapidly and starts to accelerate and goes through mitosis, whoever's living at the time of that, it's going to be real hell to pay.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
don't forget.
Like that apple that we showed earlier on the video, it's split in half or in thirds.
Don't forget, a star is just the size of a star is just the amount of energy it's being supplied. So if this area of space that we reside in, if it gets a boost of power, our star is going to grow in size, and so will our planet.
That's right. Glad we all agree. It's been a very fun talk, fellas.
Yeah, it's really good.
Very productive, I think.
I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah. So bats are pretty much everywhere across the globe. You know, to wrap it up into a summary, and they exist everywhere except for the poles. And when the poles change areas, the bats start hanging out in those areas as well. And yeah, I like what you said, Rick. Let's not forget that a star is only as big as its photosphere, which is its corona. So if the sun were to get charged by another planet, or even itself turn into the sun, which wouldn't happen because it would charge up a larger body around us first, it would instantly, a lot of the material would just turn directly into the photosphere as it burns.
Well, no, it wouldn't be able to charge itself. That charge would have to come from outside.
A little bit it would. For a little bit it would, but as its capacitance wanes, you know, it would basically start to fade. And we've seen stars do that, and they always have a funny explanation for it. There's some kind of gravitic explanation or something, but stars have faded. Most famously, of course, there were two stars at Sirius, and the Chinese have it on record and the Dogon have it on record. And they're the only two civilizations that memorized that there were extra stars there. In fact, there were two stars that were sacred to the Taoists that have faded. And now we know they exist. And so they haven't figured out, you know, for themselves the why of it. But we have a good idea, I think. The star starved. Ha! Starved. Ha!
Starved.
It's starved. Oh man, I'm gonna look up. You know what? I'm gonna look up the etymology of starved and see if it has anything at all to do. Probably not, but you know.
So, well, either way, we know the Earth is.
Die, become stiff, to lose strength, motionless, stirred, to become stiff. It's all about stiffness. It's interesting.
Are you getting a stiffy over there?
Yeah, a Sorbana.
Look at this plate, or so-called plate, right here. Look at that connection. That's cool.
There's a volcano that's worth talking about in terms of the tectonics. Zoom in on North Korea there. Zoom in pretty far on North Korea.
Hang on, what is this? Where is this?
Well, that's the plate. That's Japan. Well, it's Russia. It's at the base of Russia as you head towards Japan. So zoom in towards North Korea. There's a really big volcano. Oh, you're going way too far. North Korea's over by.
Over here. I was way off. See,
let the computer.
I was right. I was going over there.
Let the computer do it.
Okay, now. Okay, look just above where it says Hamyong Mountains. You see that big blot?
Yeah.
That's a volcano that does not conform to any of the normal definitions of the typical three types of volcanoes. They had to do all this research, and they came up with a plate tectonics theory, but it involves subduction. And I think we should discuss potential, at least originally electrical causes as to why it's there. they do have strong evidence of the cold plate. There's a whole documentary. It's about 25 minutes long. It's definitely worth watching. This volcano was it was a biggie. It's like Crater Lake. It blew half of itself apart. And it's not over a hot spot. And it is also not due specifically to a local subduction. It's thousands of miles away from the nearest subduction zone. And it's a very important geological feature. And it woke up in the early 2000s. So if we went back and looked at the solar data, maybe there would be something there to help us. Look at that. Look at that crater below it. There's a crater down below it.
Yeah.
It almost looks like an octagon to me, but you know, I've been seeing octagons all over the place.
Okay, so if this is electrical, that could be the positive negative loop current right there.
It could very well be.
The Twin Peaks, the tits right there.
Well, there would be tend to be more of a crater, and one would be, the south one would be the cathode, and the top one would be the anode.
Let's see what this is.
It sure has some of the features from the electrical scarring.
Yeah.
So
Andrew Hall's work, all of these buttresses at 90-degree angles.
Oh no, there's a house. Never mind. Couldn't have happened there.
Look at that octagon shape. So, there's so many things for us. We don't have enough people in the community to really cover all the research that's coming out now. It's just, there's so many opportunities for growth of knowledge in this community.
Sorry, people are throwing things around.
No, it's not off your thing.
I'm gonna go back upstairs to my family. I want to say thank you and good night.
Hey, thank you guys. Yeah, I was hopping into a little bit of the news, but let's wrap it up in 2 hours here. We'll do news next week.
Oh my God! I just went to my LinkedIn feed. Some guy posted a comment or a news post. Rothschild's bank in flames in France.
Rothschild's banks in flames in France.
Yep.
Okay, so that transitions us into the news hour, and I think we should talk a lot about politics because there's a lot of really horrible things happening right now behind the scenes. And
I
there's a
want
lot of
conversation, but I really got to go spend some time with the fam. So you want to table it, or what do you want to?
Well, I'm going into the news hour, but if you want to spend time with the fam, that's fine.
I just posted the link, buddy, for the Rothschild's bank.
There is a load to talk about. So I do eventually want to have that conversation, but I do need to go. So you guys have a good night, and Godspeed.
Love you, Raymond. Thanks for being here, brother.
Bye.
Stay safe.
See you next week. All right. So yeah, next week it's definitely get on the news hour. But I wanted to talk about. Okay, you said you posted the link. I'm going to go to it. This has exactly everything to do with what's happening right now, and I wanted to inform the world that there is a huge coup that is intelligence agencies are fighting intelligence agencies right now, and there is Israeli intelligence agencies that are trying to fight those intelligence agencies getting to the top.
It's the snake versus the eagle.
Fighting. We might like to think that it's unified and people are unified going to the top, but there's a lot of infighting on the way up. Everybody wants to be at the top right now, the people that are at the top. So a lot of people that have just been replaced inside of the Trump just replaced, and I'd never really get political, but I have to talk about this stuff. Inside of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, he took a bunch of people out of it and put a bunch of new people in it that are from around the world that are trained in civil insurrections, that have been through civil insurrections. So the whole Defense Intelligence Agency now is filled with people because I'm almost 100% sure Trump's going to win, and I'm not even kidding. And people are going to be really, really upset because I get this information from quite a few different inside sources, and this is big news. And the DIA is fighting the CIA. The CIA is the big state. It is globalism. It is the globalists, and the DIA is for the state, or for the people, or at least right now. So there's going to be there's a lot of fighting, and look at this.
Well, speaking of fighting, while you play this, I'd like to mention that there is a rumor going on that the servers that were seized in Germany, there was a firefight between the CIA people there, or the people there, and the people that were going to seize the servers. There was a firefight between them.
Yes, there was a big firefight. There's a lot of really, really big, scary things going on behind the scenes right now that I don't want to be the fearmonger, but now's the time to get together and come together, because this is going to affect everybody, socioeconomical, political. There's going to be the future, and everything right now that's happening is a bio state, and we're moving towards bio security, and the biosecurity is the freedom pass, and we're going to have the COVID freedom pass to move from place to place. And there's already set up points. In the UK, you can't go from place to place without calling. I think it's the UK. You can't go anywhere without contacting the government, texting them, and telling them that that you have to do 4 things. There's only 4 reasons that you can go outside, and one of them is like to go get food. One of them is to go to the pharmacy, and I don't know what the other ones are, but so this is happening. This is really happening, and it's for real. So sorry, people are trying to burn my house down, and I had to regulate.
Your daughter?
Oh my gosh. All right, so I'm going to go to the news here. Magnetic fields can control heat and sound. That's not news. Here's an article on it. Physicists could do the impossible, create and destroy magnetic fields from afar. That sounds interesting. Israeli scientists say found a way to reverse the human aging process involving just oxygen. That sounds really cool. I'm pretty sure this article, the conclusion is it's just involving oxygen. Here. Is really using only oxygen. Recent research led in Tel Aviv University. University professor Shuri Effarti, sorry, I don't know, I botched that name, together with a team of Shamir Medical Center, found that when healthy adults over the age of 64 were placed in a pressurized chamber and given pure oxygen for 90 minutes a day, 5 times a week for 3 months, not only was the aging process delayed, it was actually reversed. And that goes into breathing techniques too. Breathing. So that's a good article. But I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll do more of the news hour next week. But yeah, this week a lot's going to go down, so stay vigilant. And thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Rick. And I'll see you next week, brother.
All right, take care, my friend. Be well.
All right. Take care, man. Have a good week. Bye.